All right, so my presentation is very visual, and Simon talked about flexibility. Now, my monitor's really good, so if you want to see it, just feel free, come down, look over my shoulder, that'll be fine. All right, the future of assessment. I'm going to start with a story. In 1895, H.G. Wells published. Does anybody know what he published? You can just take a guess if you know what he published. Time Machine, Invisible Man. It was the Time Machine. What I want to think about is, imagine if H.G. Wells actually built that time machine and he went to modern London. He would be just overwhelmed with the hectic pace. Smartphones, what are those? There are people there looking at ATMs. He'd just be totally overwhelmed. So he might retreat and find an older style building that he's more comfortable with. And in this building he found something strangely familiar, because he'd accidentally stumbled across a school, and that was very familiar to him. Okay, so it hadn't changed very much. And it's not just schools. If we look at higher education, a lot of our exams are still in the formal, traditional way. The chair of the Australian Curriculum Assessment and Reporting Authority said that the testing technology used in our grandparents' days, that is handwritten examinations, is simply not suitable today. And we all know that assessment drives learning, but even more importantly, David Bowd said, students can escape bad teaching, but they can't escape bad assessment. I want to give an example of that. Does anybody know Tom Reeves at all? Instructional designer, very famous in that field. And about 30 years ago, when computer-based training, or even perhaps a little bit earlier, when computer-based training was just kicking off, he had a colleague who built the worst computer-based training he had ever seen. Anyhow, his colleague ended up writing a paper about how statistically significant improvement these students got using his computer-based training. And he couldn't understand that at all. So he went and talked to the students, got them around for coffee, and he said, look, I'm really interested to know how that computer-based training went. What happened? And the students said, it was the worst thing we ever did. So we gave up on it and we all studied together in the library. And so that's that thing about evidence. You really need to know if it's true or not. There are some great assessment innovators. We've got them in the room. We've just had a talk on one. We'll have another one soon. And these can be no-tech. Now, I'm very much a tech person, but it doesn't have to be technology driven. It can be low-tech and it can be high-tech. So no-tech is where you might have actors coming in, playing patients that can simulate a waiting room. Low-tech, any people here use Socrative or Go Soapbox? A few people? Yep. But what about if you can't use mobile devices? If you're in a school, for example. Let's go even lower tech. Anybody ever used a Plicker? You have? Oh, we've got a few people. So what are they? Okay, so we're schools where the students can't have mobile phones, but the teacher can. They can print out personalised QR codes and the students orientate the thing. Teacher takes a photo and it automatically marks all their work. So it's a very low-tech one, but it still works. Of course, there's high-tech like the 3D collaboration studio at the University of the Sunshine Coast. So assessment is changing. This was in the paper the other day. In South Australia, students to gain university entry through portfolio of work instead of exams and tertiary admission ranks. So they're looking at changing that assessment there. So, some challenges and opportunities with the changes. Scalability is a problem. Now, I'm okay with the tech. The people on our team are okay with the tech, but most academic staff are not innovators or early adopters. So my aim on the team is to shift the curve a little bit. And we do that through having forums like today with the Designing for Learning forum. And I also have I put in every view sites really short little just-in-time professional development modules for staff. And I've got for staff only, so the students don't see it, but the staff can go and see how they can record lectures using Zoom or whatever. The next challenge, and I was an academic and I did this many, many times, I took the easy road. And we often end up measuring the things that are easy to measure, such as information recall. So what's happened is the automation of many of the easy to automate processes of traditional assessment is what we look at, such as multiple choice questions, big data. And the application of technology has tended to serve the needs of administrative efficiency rather than trigger genuine transformation. For example, we still have very, very many text-based online quizzes. So a quick quiz. And now I think there'll be disagreement here about the correct answer, so you have to look carefully. Are multiple choice exams an accurate measure of one's knowledge? A, yes. A and C. A and B. Or all of the above. Okay. So most multiple choice, they're used to promote memorisation and factual recall, surface learning, which is good for some things like times tables and things like that. But it doesn't allow you to apply the knowledge in other situations. And some students might be like this: I forgot to make a backup copy of my brain, so everything I learned last semester was lost. So how can we construct multiple choice questions a little bit better? Well, one of the ways we can do that is to attach them to real world scenarios. So rather than saying, what is the first concern of an emergency worker, we can set the scene. You arrive at the scene of an accident where people are panicked and yelling. 3 people appear to be injured. What action will you take first? So we're wrapping it in context. We can have good visuals. So rather than saying, select the best definition of active learning, or active listening, which video best demonstrates active listening during a call with an irate customer? And they watch the videos and can choose from there. We can ask them to say why they've chosen an answer. You know, what are 3 signs of edema? Could be a typical question. We could rephrase that as, a patient entered the hospital with edema of both lower extremities. What action should the nurse take and why? We can have graded alternatives. That is, and this is a surface example, but you'll get the idea. If they get the right answer, they get full marks. If they're close, they get less marks. And if they're really far off, they lose marks. Now, that can be used really well where you have a process to follow. So we're in with mathematics, and often the students will just make a mistake right at the end. And so they've nearly got it right, but they've just missed. So in here, each option reveals a particular mistake, and so you can reward the process. So if they're close to the right answer, then you can give them part marks. Here's another one, confidence-based marking. A big problem with multiple choice questions is that people just guess. You know, they've got a 25% chance of getting it right. Well, you can scare the pants off them by saying, yep, have a go at the question and then tell us what your confidence level is for that particular question. If it's low, you can score 1. If it's medium, you can score 2 marks, but if you get it wrong, you'll lose 2 marks. Or if it's high, if you really think you're right, then you get 3, but if you get it wrong, you'll lose 6 marks. So this makes them think internally, do I really know the answer to this one? So this whole idea of context is important. This is something I did with the School of Nursing back in 2009. I won't go into the reasons we developed it, but it really is just a multiple choice question. And it was a real assessment they had.
I'm 16 and in Year 10. I'm in the top 10% of all my classes. Yesterday I got my permit to learn to drive. I have lots of friends and I like partying with them. We go out a lot. Oh yeah, I have a brother in Year 12.
And then they had to pick the answer and then they get feedback whether it was right or wrong and they could have another go. Now this particular assessment, what do you think I built that with? What tool? Captivate, you might think Captivate. I used PowerPoint. Okay. All you need to do to build a simulation in PowerPoint is to put up your options and then highlight the option, select hyperlink and go to the right page or slide for that one, such as congratulations, you win. And if you want to do it in a graphic way, all you need to do is put a transparent hotspot, like draw a shape over the area you want, make it transparent and hyperlink that out. So then they can click the images. And you can make a simulation just as I did there. The bonus is that you can save it as an interactive PDF. So you can give them in a PDF which allows them to click, like those old books we'd say go to page 100 or 200 and so on. So why did I use PowerPoint when there are other tools like Captivate which can give me much richer interactions? Easy. Okay, what I'm looking at is scalability by empowering academic staff. I don't want you all to learn Captivate. If I can show you, look, you can do this in PowerPoint. Captivate can still be used, but then you'll need to team up with your blended learning team. Gamification will be a big part of assessment in the future. Assessments are more meaningful if people give maximum effort, and games are a good way to get that effort from students. So I'm going to go back even further than 2009 now. I think this is 2008, 2007. This was a game that I loved, and I still love it. Has anyone ever seen the Crimescene Game? No? It's if you just put in Crimescene Game Horton, you'll find it. Basically, they set the scene. You're a junior detective, and you're trying to find out who the robber was. And your first option is, I'll start right now. Then you're given options. Okay, so you sit down beside her, she seems a bit shaken but not hysterical, and you can either say, let me introduce myself, or quick, what can you tell us? So I'm going to select, quick, what can you tell us? And she says, who are you? Are you a reporter? Police told me not to talk to anyone. I don't have to talk to you, do I? She folds her arm in a defiant pose. So then I could say, sorry, I'm a little impatient, let me introduce myself, or I selected, I'm the police and I'll ask the questions here. And that bumped me out of the game. I lost straight away because I lost 5 marks for being too abrupt and then 30 points for losing all cooperation with the witness. So obviously, if you choose to have different feedback branches there, the students get different feedback. For adding context, you can add video, you can add virtual worlds. We've got one where it's Parramatta campus 200 years ago. I'll skip it because I'm running out of time. So why aren't we doing more of this? Technology part is simple. Just ask any of your blended learning advisors. They'll say they can do it. Here's where the problem comes. Storyboarding and developing the content is the difficult part. So coming up with the ideas, storyboarding it, working out where the different branch scenarios are going, that takes time. So that leads us to the final challenge that I've got, which is what a lot of staff say, where do I get the resources to do this sort of graphical stuff? Well, if you go to search.creativecommons.org, you can find video, you can find audio, you can find pictures that are Creative Commons licensed, which just means you can select it and give attribution. So I'll just give you a moment if you want to write that one down. You can also get Creative Commons from Google. If you go to images in Google and you drop down, I think it's more, or search tools or one of them, it says usage rights. And you can select usage rights to be Creative Commons. So very simple. The one I'm using mostly now, though, is this one, Pixabay, because it gives me public domain ones, so I don't even have to give attribution. I really like this one. And they're high quality images. So that one is pixabay.com. And I haven't got it in here as well, but if you go to the library, there's a thing called EduTV. And it has all, I needed to get a film clip of that Calcutta Bridge falling down. It was on there. I can use it. It's from the library and it's part of our thing. So go to the library, search for EduTV, and you can find TV clips to use. The other thing is you've always got a high definition camera and video camera with you at all times, so you can make use of that. This video is not working, but basically in construction management, Mary encourages her students, if they go past a construction site, take a picture, come back and talk with your lecturers about it. But as lecturers, we can do the same thing. If we see something interesting, boom, take it and incorporate it into your classes. My wife does that on her social media site. She could put a Pixabay picture up there. People go, man. She puts one of her broad beans in the backyard, she gets thousands of likes. So you can also have students as creators. When I was doing the nursing one, I thought, how am I going to develop this? How am I going to do the graphics? And my daughter walked past me to go and play on SimCity. Aha. So I said, can you do a job for me? And so she developed all the graphics in a couple of hours on Sims, and cheeky little bugger put herself in there because she had a broken leg at the time. So that was her as part of the assessment. And I also used this assessment thing, we had students learning the technology. So I said, how about you create a learning object for the subject you're in? So this is an example.
Welcome to the Psychology of Amputation by Elise Graham. First off, I have a quick question for everyone. What is amputation? Amputation is the condition where one or more limbs have been removed either through trauma, disease, or surgery. Amputations are classified into two categories, either upper limb or lower limb amputation, of which can give connotation to both the age and the cause of the amputation. Upper limb amputation, or amputation of all or part of the arm, are usually due to trauma and are more commonly found in healthy young adults.
And it goes on, but she's developed up a learning object which could be used to teach others. I've still got 5, or is that questions as well? I've got 5. Oh, I'll just slow down then. Okay, the other thing you can do is have the students develop up some of your assessment items. These people went and taught their students how to do Bloom's taxonomy, which is what they were using, and the students developed up a big bank of questions, and they still had some of their own questions, but they used some of the student questions, but the process of them actually developing the questions helped them in the learning process. Okay, that should be challenge 4. I did have one more. Okay, and this is a big one. That's not the way we do it here. You know, we've never done it like that, but that's also our greatest opportunity. My doctoral thesis was about pedagogical re-engineering, and that is that ordinary staff, because we've been forced to use technology, are thinking of new and innovative and novel ways to teach. And that's what this is forcing us to do. And I think this is interesting. We use tools not to cheat, but as a way to increase our capacity for critical and creative thought. But then we don't allow them to use tools in the assessment, say in the final exam. Well, in business they did. They had the iPad exam where students were allowed to bring in an iPad. And the video's not working terribly well, but it came out with this great quote. I think it should be a test of understanding rather than a test of remembering. Okay, because if you're in the workplace, no one's going to say you can't have access to the internet, you can't have access to the iPad. So we need to think of new ways of assessing. And I like this one. This would be a real challenge to the admin people and timetabling and all the rest of it. When ready assessment. For example, no one feels cheated because their driving test is not on the same day. We've all got to have the exam on the same day. No one worries about that. So we might end up having more well-balanced, when-ready assessments rather than a set piece once a year, no research culture that drives assessment at the moment. If we can get technology assessment to scale in an important arena like driving, why not in others? And I'm doing professional development at the moment, certification from digital marketing and the rest of it, and these people have when-ready assessment, and you get certified when you go through the thing. And it's going to be a big competitor to us, because it's very attractive to people. All right, so if you think, I'm interested in learning more about this, what should I do? Simple. Talk to your friendly blended learning team. Now, they're not all as friendly as computing, engineering and maths, but they are friendly, the other ones. All right, so that gets us to questions.
Thanks so much, Graham. So any questions for Graham? I've got one up the back.
Yep.
Eagle person. Somebody who I run a business, Harvard business.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yep. I mean, yeah, to be honest, I'm not against exams for that reason. But they're part of the mix. And the other thing that I tried to do with the assessment was, rather than making it very, get it out of the textbook or whatever, is really situated in a context where they can't copy and paste from somewhere else, and maybe do it as a process within the tutorial so you can look over their shoulder and see that they're working on it at the time. So, yep. Yep. Yeah, the digital marketing one that I'm doing, they've split the lessons up into modules, and so there'll be a lecture which is 6 slots of 10 minutes. Then they have a quiz, a barrier quiz, so you don't even get the next lecture until you've finished that barrier quiz. Then when you've gone through all the modules and you've done all the barrier quizzes, then you sit the exam. Now, that's the way they're doing it with their one. But it is a challenge, definitely.
I think it's all around that whole assessment design, isn't it?
Yep.
So, again, trying to profile our students and getting to know them. A student that beautiful essay that is unlike all their other pieces of work. It's just all those strategies. Yeah. So we really need to, I suppose, get to know our students and, like Irene. We actually run a workshop on that. But it's about, looking at assessment design, minimise the opportunities for well, there are some simple strategies, obviously, other than requirements. We just call it Ghostbusters. I can talk to you about that later on in
it's a complex question, isn't it? Yep. And it's not a simple answer. Pearson that can now do computer-based. Retinal images is not that far away. The other thing that I would say is, if we are graduating students, believe that it's okay to cheat. Some of that is about trying to develop that understanding. I've looked at the assignment and thought,
And there's a lot of work being done on MOOCs at the moment with peer assessment, and there was one big study where they did a lot where they did the correlation with university lecturers, and because they had such a good rubric, the peer assessment was very, very good.
Thanks so much, Graham.
Okay. I'll be around, so if you want to see me, come and have a chat.